Deep in the mist-covered woods of Oregon, Nurse Leah Weston was just looking for peace, a weekend alone to clear her head. What she found instead was a dying man buried beneath leaves, bloodied and barely breathing. With no ID, no memory, and a voice raspy with desperation, he whispered just one thing: "Don't let them find me." Leah saves him, but as his strength returns, so do the fragments of a past life, one filled with opulence, betrayal, and danger. When a news alert flashes across the screen revealing the man's identity, Caleb Grayson, a tech billionaire missing for 2 years and presumed dead, her world flips upside down. Someone powerful wanted Caleb gone, someone powerful still does. Now hunted by shadowy forces, Leah is thrust into a web of corporate espionage, secret vaults, and a deadly conspiracy that goes far beyond money. As they run for their lives, Caleb and Leah must uncover the truth, not just about what happened to him, but about the secrets that could bring down a global empire. What begins as a rescue becomes a revolution, and it all started with a nurse, a forest, and a man the world thought was long buried. The forest was quiet, eerily so. Not the kind of quiet that brought peace, but the kind that pressed in around you, muffling every step, every breath, as if the trees themselves were holding theirs. Leah Weston tightened the straps of her backpack and took a deep breath, the crisp air cutting into her lungs like ice. The sky overhead was a soft gray, the clouds swollen with the promise of rain. But Leah didn't mind. After 3 straight weeks of back-to-back shifts in the ER, she'd learned to find solace in overcast skies and solitude. This weekend wasn't just a break, it was necessary. She had driven out to Willamette National Forest the night before, parking her Jeep at a rarely used trailhead and setting up camp by a secluded stream. No cell service, no emails, no patients coding on stretchers, just the sound of wind in the trees and her own thoughts, well, the ones she could bear to sit with. A branch cracked under her boot as she hiked further up the trail. Pine needles crunched beneath her. She liked the rhythm of it, the physicality. Something about walking without destination always made her feel like she was still moving forward, even if she wasn't sure where she was headed. It was only mid-morning when something disrupted the rhythm, a sound that didn't belong. A groan, faint, almost animal-like. Leah stopped mid-step, instinctively scanning her surroundings. She crouched low, eyes narrowed toward a cluster of fallen branches ahead. The groan came again, closer now. It was followed by the sound of someone shifting in pain. Humans. Her body responded before her brain did. Dropping her pack, Leah sprinted forward, pushing through undergrowth, branches tearing at her jacket. She skidded to a stop in a small hollow at the base of a ridge. There, crumpled beneath a log and covered in a thin blanket of moss and leaves, was a man. He looked broken. Mud-streaked face, torn flannel shirt soaked in blood. His lips were cracked, skin pale. His chest barely moved. For a terrifying second, Leah thought he was already gone. "Hey," she said, voice firm but calm. She dropped to her knees and touched his neck. A pulse, weak, but there. "You're okay, I'm here, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered. Leah reached into her jacket for the compact medkit she always carried. Habit from working trauma. She cleaned the cut on his forehead, felt along his ribs for breaks, and checked for spinal injury. He moaned when she touched his left side. "You've got internal bruising," she said mostly to herself. "Possibly a punctured lung." The man's lips moved. She leaned in. "Don't let them find me," he whispered. What? Who? She asked, but he was already slipping back under. Leah knew she couldn't leave him here. He wouldn't survive another night. Her camp was a mile back, too far. She checked her GPS. There was an old ranger outpost less than half that distance down the slope. Hoisting him over her shoulders, Leah gritted her teeth against the strain. The man wasn't heavy, but dead weight was a different story. Every few steps he groaned, and she murmured reassurances she wasn't sure he could hear. It took nearly 30 minutes to reach the cabin. It was little more than a wooden shack with a cot and emergency supplies, but it was dry and it had heat. She laid him down, checked his vitals again, and cleaned more of the wounds now that she had light. Who was he? What had happened out there? She opened his jacket in search of ID. Nothing. No wallet, no phone. Just a chain around his neck with a dented, almost illegible tag. C. Grayson. It rang a faint bell, but Leah couldn't place it. Maybe she'd heard the name before. Maybe not. By nightfall he was sleeping, shivering, but alive. Leah sat by the fire, sipping stale coffee from a tin mug, glancing at him every few minutes. Something about this didn't feel like a hiker who'd just gotten lost. His injuries were too precise, like someone had meant to hurt him. And those words, "Don't let them find me." She looked out into the dark forest beyond the window. Suddenly, it didn't feel so quiet anymore. The wind screamed through the trees that night, carrying with it a sense of unease. Leah sat on the floor of the ranger cabin, her back against the log wall, blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Every time the wind shifted, she thought she heard footsteps, but when she strained to listen, there was nothing. The man, C. Grayson, if the tag was real, stirred and groaned in his sleep. Leah approached and checked his temperature. Still high, but the infection wasn't worsening. He was stable, for now. She couldn't stop replaying the moment she found him, the way his body was positioned, the bruises that looked more like blunt force trauma than a fall, the absence of hiking gear, food, or even a backpack. Something was wrong. She tried again to get a signal from her phone. Nothing, not even a flicker. The nearest town with a working network was 20 miles away. That night, he woke screaming. Leah leapt up, grabbing the flashlight. His eyes were wide, wild with fear. "They're here," he gasped, reaching for her arm. "They found me. You have to run." "No one's here," Leah whispered, gently pressing his hand down. "You're safe. I've got you." He shook his head. "You don't understand. They kill people." "Who are they?" she asked. But he passed out before he could answer. She sat up the rest of the night, flashlight in one hand, the other gripping a fireplace poker, just in case. Morning came with a gray drizzle and aching bones. Leah went into nurse mode, cycling through basic care, hydration, antibiotics, sponge bathing to reduce the fever. Every movement she made reminded her of the ER. The difference was, this time, there was no backup. By midday, he was conscious again. His lips were cracked, and he drank water greedily. Leah helped him sit up. "I'm Leah," she said. "Nurse. You've got a puncture in your side, bruised ribs, mild concussion. You need a hospital." "No," he said, voice raw. "No hospitals, no police." She studied him. "Why? Who are you?" He hesitated, eyes darting to the small window as if someone might be watching. "I don't know," he said at last. "I remember falling, running. I remember screaming, then darkness." But your name, C. Grayson? He nodded slowly, then shook his head. It sounds familiar, but it doesn't feel like me. Amnesia. Leah had seen it before in trauma patients, especially those with severe stress or head injuries. But this wasn't just lost memory, it felt like lost identity. Later, she stepped outside to collect firewood, casting wary glances into the trees. As she bent to gather a few fallen branches, she noticed something strange. Boot prints, not hers, not his. Someone had been near the cabin. She returned inside, bolted the door, and pulled the curtains tight. Someone was looking for him. She just didn't know who. 2 days passed before he could sit upright without wincing. Leah made soup from canned goods she found in the emergency stash, feeding him in silence. He began speaking more. Small details came back in flashes. I remember a plane. Private jet, maybe. There was a man with a scar on his neck. I think he hit me. Do you remember your job, what you did before this? Leah asked. Something big, important. I think I had money, power. He paused, brows furrowing. But I wasn't happy. That night, Leah built a fire and gave him a clean shirt from her pack. He looked at her with gratitude and fear. You saved me. You didn't have to. I don't walk past dying people, she said simply. Then you're rare, he muttered. She decided to check the ID tag again. C. Grayson, no serial number, just initials, and a faint engraving of an eagle's wings. An insignia, maybe. She photographed it with her phone, hoping to research it later. Before bed, she turned on the small battery-powered radio she'd packed. Static. Then a voice. Remains of Caleb Grayson still unconfirmed. The tech mogul disappeared over 2 years ago. Leah's heart skipped. She turned to him slowly. Grayson, Caleb Grayson, that's you. He looked stunned. She held out the tag. You're the missing billionaire, the one they thought was dead. He looked at her with haunted eyes. Then they'll come for me, and they'll come for you, too. Leah's mind reeled. Caleb Grayson. She'd heard the name before, once splashed across business magazines and news feeds. The tech billionaire who vanished during a yacht trip in the Adriatic Sea, presumed dead after authorities found nothing but an empty vessel and traces of blood. Rumors swirled for months. Suicide, murder, self-exile. None were confirmed. Eventually, the story faded, but now that ghost was breathing in her makeshift sickbay. She watched Caleb closely. He didn't deny it. He just sat in silence, his eyes cast toward the floor, shoulders hunched. I don't remember the yacht, he murmured, but I know the name. Caleb Grayson. It feels like a shadow I lived in. Leah took out the chain with the ID tag again, this time examining it in the firelight. The engraving was clearer now. The eagle wings weren't just decorative. They were part of a symbol, military, corporate. She snapped a photo with her phone, knowing she'd have to look it up once they found reception. Do you remember anything about your life? She asked. Where you lived? Family? Friends? He shook his head. Only flashes, a woman's voice, a man in a suit. I think I had a brother. Or someone I trusted once. Leah nodded slowly, absorbing his words. You didn't have a wallet or phone. Nothing to identify you. Just this tag. I wouldn't have carried a wallet if I was on the run, he said grimly. Whoever tried to kill me probably took it. Leah frowned. Something about that felt off. If he was meant to die in the woods, why go to the trouble of erasing his identity? Why leave him just alive enough to crawl into her path? She decided to return to the site where she found him. Maybe there was something she missed, some piece of evidence the attackers had overlooked. "I'll be gone for an hour," she said, grabbing her coat and flashlight. Caleb looked up sharply. "Number, don't go alone. They could still be out there." "I need to know what happened," she replied. "If someone's trying to finish the job, we need answers. We can't hide forever." He nodded reluctantly, and she stepped out into the forest, wind howling through the trees. The hike back to the hollow was unnerving. Every branch that snapped under her boots felt too loud. Every rustle of leaves is too calculated. She kept her flashlight low, scanning the ground where she'd first found him. There, half buried beneath a rock, a scrap of cloth. She tugged it free. It was part of a dark suit jacket torn at the shoulder. Inside, she found something wedged into the lining, a thin leather wallet. She turned it over in her hand. The edges were scratched, the leather worn, but the initials were still visible. CG. Carefully, she opened it. Inside were 2 credit cards, expired for over a year, both bearing the name Caleb Grayson. There was also a photo tucked in a side pocket, 2 men in tuxedos, arms around each other's shoulders, toasting glasses at what looked like a gala. Caleb was clearly one of them. The other man was unfamiliar, tall, square-jawed, confident. In the photo, both wore matching lapel pins in the shape of a stylized A. Leah pocketed the photo and the wallet, scanning the surrounding area one more time. She found nothing else. No tracks, no footprints. Whoever had left Caleb here was careful. Back at the cabin, Caleb was pacing when she returned. "I found your wallet," she said quietly, placing it on the table. He stared at it, blinking. "I recognize this, that picture. I know him." "Friend?" Leah asked. Caleb's brow furrowed. "Number, not friend. Partner. His name's Dominic Hall." Leah looked him up and down. Dominic Hall, wasn't he the COO of Grayson Dynamics? "Yes," Caleb said, jaw tightening. "And if I was found in the woods with no ID, and Dominic was the last person I remember trusting, then he's not just a partner. He's the one who betrayed you." A long silence stretched between them. Caleb sat down, gripping the wallet. He wanted control. My company, my name, maybe even my death. Leah pulled the photo from her pocket. "What's this pin?" Caleb studied it. "That's the Atherton Circle. It's like a private club. Tech elites. They say it's just a networking group, but I always suspected it was more." "More like what?" "More like the people who run the world from behind the curtain." Leah raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me you were part of some underground tech cabal?" "I'm telling you I was invited to it," he said. "But I never wanted it. I wanted out. That might be why they tried to erase me." Leah's stomach twisted. The man she found wasn't just a billionaire. He was a key to something much darker, and someone still wanted him gone. The rain began again at dusk, tapping steadily against the cabin roof as if warning them not to get comfortable. Leah sat at the old desk near the window, her laptop open and tethered to a satellite hotspot. She kept in her emergency kit. It was slow, painfully so, but after nearly an hour she finally had enough bandwidth to check the news. She wasn't ready for what she saw. A breaking headline in red splashed across the top of the screen. New evidence surfaces in Grayson disappearance. Authorities reopen case. Leah clicked. The article was vague, likely written on fragments of information, but the core was clear. A witness had come forward claiming to have seen Caleb Grayson in the Pacific Northwest. No name, no timestamp, just a blurry photo taken on a trail camera. Grainy, indistinct, but enough for the internet to go wild. Reddit threads were exploding. Conspiracy forums were dissecting the image. Was he alive? Was this AI generated? A decoy? "I think I've just painted a target on our backs," Leah muttered. Caleb, leaning weakly against the doorframe, studied the screen. "They're watching the feeds. They'll know." "You think Dominic had this leak planted?" she asked. "Could be. If they think I'm alive, they'll double down to keep the truth buried." Leah pulled up another article, this one from a financial blog. It detailed how Grayson Dynamics Board recently voted to give Dominic Hall emergency executive powers due to Grayson's confirmed demise. Billions had shifted. Entire subsidiaries sold off in weeks. It was a corporate feeding frenzy, all under the guise of mourning. "They've already picked the bones clean," Caleb said bitterly. A static crackled ping interrupted her thoughts. The radio scanner on the shelf lit up with a new transmission. Small aircraft sighted, tracking east across Willamette Range, matching surveillance criteria. Leah's eyes snapped to Caleb's. "They're searching the forest," she whispered. "They're using drones." She closed the laptop, doused the fire, and moved Caleb to the floor, hidden behind the cot. That night the trees glowed faintly with passing lights overhead, silent, mechanical, and merciless. Leah didn't sleep. Neither did Caleb. The next morning the forest was quiet again, but neither of them believed in that calm anymore. Paranoia clung to the cabin walls like smoke. Caleb flinched at every bird call, every gust of wind. Leah couldn't blame him. She spent the early hours inspecting the perimeter. No fresh tracks, but she found a red mark painted on a tree 100 yards out. Subtle, like a surveyor's mark, but too fresh to ignore. Someone had been close. When she returned, Caleb was pacing. "I remember more," he said abruptly. "The yacht trip. They told me it was a celebration. We'd just secured a defense contract. Dominic was smiling. Too much." Leah sat him down, letting him talk. Trauma patients often unlocked memories in fragments, usually emotional spikes. "He offered me a drink. I took one sip and collapsed. The last thing I saw was his shoes. Italian, shiny." "You were drugged?" she asked. He nodded. "Then I woke up on a concrete floor, no windows, just fluorescent lights and cold steel. Someone asked me questions, over and over." "Do you remember what they wanted?" Leah prompted. "Access codes, biometric keys, the Atherton vault." I said no. "What's the Atherton vault?" she asked. He hesitated. "Everything, my life's work. A digital ledger of every deal, every name, every hand that moved billions through Grayson Dynamics and beyond." Her heart skipped. "You have evidence?" "I did. It was stored on a secure server with dead man encryption. If I die, the data goes public. That's why they didn't kill me yet." Leah exhaled slowly. "Then we need to get to that data." "There's a way," Caleb said, "but we'll need to get to my estate in Vermont." Leah blinked. "You want to cross the country with bounty hunters and drones on our heels?" "It's either that," he said, "or we both disappear forever." She was about to argue when a sound made them both freeze. A vehicle outside, the soft crunch of tires on damp earth. Leah grabbed the fireplace poker and motioned for Caleb to hide behind the supply crates. Heart racing, she eased toward the window. A black SUV was parked just at the edge of the clearing. No license plate, its engine still idled. Two figures in dark clothing stepped out, scanning the tree line with binoculars. Not forest rangers. She ducked and whispered, "Stay quiet. If they find you, it's over." But it was too late. One of the men pointed toward the cabin. The other raised what looked like a thermal scanner. "We're burned," Leah said under her breath. "We have to move." She tossed Caleb a jacket and grabbed the emergency satchel. There was only one exit left. The back window, half rotted but small enough to crawl through. They made it out just as the first Molotov cocktail shattered against the front door. Flames erupted instantly. Leah and Caleb hit the dirt and scrambled into the underbrush, crawling until they were far enough to run. Behind them, the cabin exploded in a wave of heat and smoke. By the time they reached the ridge, they were covered in mud and ash, lungs burning. Caleb looked back once, eyes hollow. "They're not trying to find me," he said quietly. "They're trying to erase you." They didn't stop running until their legs gave out. Hidden beneath a fallen tree near a rocky stream, Leah and Caleb lay in silence, catching their breath. Behind them, a column of black smoke still rose into the overcast sky, an eerie memorial to the cabin that had been their only shelter. The heat of it still clung to Leah's skin. "They found us too fast," she whispered. "No one should have known we were there." Caleb nodded grimly. They had eyes in the sky. That thermal scanner was military grade, not something off a hunting site. They couldn't stay out in the open. The forest, once a place of solitude, was now hostile territory. "I know a place," Leah said. "It's not much, but it has walls and a roof. My clinic. It's back near the trailhead where I parked." The trek took the rest of the day. Leah used every detour, every bushcraft trick she knew to stay off paths, to avoid drones. By dusk, they arrived at a nondescript building nestled between overgrown pines and old logging roads. Feel Good Mobile Medical, her private field clinic. The interior was small and rustic, but clean. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and cedar. Caleb looked around, collapsing on the examination table with a groan. "Reminds me of a fallout shelter," he muttered. "Exactly why I picked it," Leah replied. She locked the doors, pulled down the blackout curtains, and finally turned on the satellite Wi-Fi again. The laptop glowed to life. She logged into her private medical account to record Caleb's condition, but the screen froze mid-upload. An alert popped up. "Unauthorized IP access detected. Session terminated." She unplugged the router. "They're watching digital traffic," she muttered, "even encrypted lines." "No more tech," Caleb said. "Just paper, people, and footprints from here on out." Leah began redressing his wounds. "You'll need a few more days to stabilize. You're lucky your lung didn't collapse." He studied her as she worked. "Why are you doing this?" She looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "You didn't have to save me. You didn't have to risk your life. Most people would have called the police or walked away." She paused. "I'm not most people." "I'm starting to see that," Caleb said softly. The moment hung there, intimate and raw, until a loud bang shattered it. Something had struck the roof. Both of them froze. Then a second bang. Closer, louder. A message was being sent. They weren't safe yet. Leah yanked Caleb off the table and into the back storage room just as the power cut out. The clinic fell into thick darkness. Only the emergency LEDs blinked faintly in the hallway. "What the hell was that?" Caleb asked, voice taut. "Warning shot," Leah replied. "Or a test. They're checking if we've gone underground." She handed him a flashlight and her old revolver, one she kept in a locked drawer for emergencies. "You remember how to use this?" Caleb held it, familiar weight settling into his hand. "Yes, I do." That chilled her more than comforted her. A soft click came from the front door, someone testing the lock. Leah activated the building's manual lockdown system, a sliding iron bolt and a reinforced crossbar. It wouldn't hold forever, but it might buy them time. A shadow moved past the window. "They're not coming in guns blazing," Caleb said. "That means they want something." "You," Leah answered. "Alive." A sharp ping echoed from her laptop. The signal was back. Just for a second, long enough to load one last alert from a private newsfeed Caleb had set up years ago. It was a stock report. Grayson Dynamics to finalize $12 billion defense merger with Black Shield Corp. Caleb's expression turned to ice. Black Shield, that's it. That's who was backing Dominic. "Private paramilitary contractor?" Leah asked. "They do more than that," he said. "Cyber weapons, predictive surveillance, AI-guided conflict systems, the kind of tech I refuse to sell to foreign bidders." Leah exhaled. "And now that you're gone, they're getting everything they want." "Unless I stop them." He stood shakily but resolutely. "We need to get to Vermont. That's where the vault is. That's where the data lives." Leah looked at him, then at the clinic. Once a place of healing, now just another compromised haven. "I have a friend," she said, "investigative journalist. If anyone can help expose this, it's him." "Then we call him." "No," she said, eyes hard. "We brought it to him, in person." Outside, the sound of a drone buzzed faintly through the air. It passed overhead and vanished into the night. The clock was ticking. They had one shot to cross the country, expose a conspiracy, and survive. And it all started now. Leah and Caleb left the clinic before dawn, using a rusted maintenance road that Leah hadn't traveled in years. Caleb was still weak, but his steps were more confident now, and his mind seemed clearer by the hour. The fire in his eyes had returned, not just a will to live, but a hunger for justice. They reached Leah's jeep, hidden near the original trailhead. It started on the second try, sputtering to life like a reluctant ally. Their destination was Portland. Leah's former partner, Marcus Hale, was a journalist for a fiercely independent online news outlet. Their history was complicated, professional respect wrapped around old emotional wounds. But Marcus was smart, relentless, and most importantly, trusted. They reached the city by late afternoon. Leah took the back roads, circling twice to be sure they weren't followed. Marcus lived in a refurbished warehouse-turned-loft near the old industrial district, cluttered with camera gear and whiteboards covered in scribbled red ink. He opened the door in a t-shirt and sweats, staring at Leah like he'd seen a ghost. "You look like hell," he said. Then he noticed Caleb behind her. His eyes narrowed. "Is that—" Leah stepped inside. Marcus, meet Caleb Grayson, alive, pissed off, and ready to blow this whole thing open. Marcus let out a low whistle. Damn, this is gonna be good. Marcus paced his loft while scanning the ID tag, the photo, and the wallet Leah had recovered. He paused only to cross-reference data on his wall of monitors. You know this is suicide, right? He said, not unkindly. The people who erased Caleb don't just want secrets buried, they want history rewritten. That's why we need to get ahead of them, Caleb said. We need a digital footprint, fast. If we go public before they can discredit me, we control the narrative. But the public won't believe it's you without proof, Marcus countered. You've been dead for 2 years. I have something better than belief, Caleb said. I have fingerprints. Marcus arched a brow. Hospital records, Leah explained. I recorded them before the clinic was compromised. They set up a makeshift biometric scanner. Marcus uploaded the data to a secure cross-checking service he'd used for years. It took just 15 minutes to confirm what they already knew. Match found Caleb Michael Grayson, status deceased. Social Security number terminated March 23, 2023. Caleb stared at the screen. That's me, legally dead. Marcus sat back. Congratulations, you're a ghost. That might actually work in our favor. The next few hours were spent documenting everything. Audio recordings, photographs, interviews. Marcus even took samples of Caleb's voice for forensic analysis. This is the biggest story of my career, he said softly. But we need to move fast. If Black Shield gets wind of this... He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what was at stake. The next morning the power went out, not just in the loft, in the entire block. Leah stared at the dark monitors. That's not normal, right? No, Marcus said grimly. My server room has 3 failovers. Even during the last storm, I didn't go dark. Caleb moved to the window. Down on the street, a black van idled near the curb. The kind of van that looked government-issued with no logos and darkened windows. Pack everything, Caleb said. Now. Marcus grabbed his drives. There's a safe house we can use, northwest of here, near the gorge. Signal dead zone. They moved quickly, but not quickly enough. As they reached the stairwell, Leah saw 2 men in tactical gear entering the lobby below. She turned to Caleb. Split up? He nodded. We meet at the safe house. If one of us doesn't make it. We'll make it, she said firmly. Leah and Caleb took the fire escape, while Marcus slipped through the maintenance garage. The van roared to life and gave chase. Leah floored the Jeep, weaving through narrow alleys as bullets shattered the rear window. Caleb held onto the frame, ducking as glass sprayed across the seats. They didn't stop driving until the city was far behind them. They reached the safe house at dawn. It was a rundown farmhouse buried deep in the Columbia River gorge, covered in moss and surrounded by thick forest. It had no power, no plumbing, but it had silence. There, Caleb finally revealed the next piece of the puzzle. My family estate is in Vermont. We kept a private data vault beneath the wine cellar, off-grid, analog backups, biometric locks. Leah raised a brow. What kind of wine cellar has biometric locks? The kind that also stores federal contracts, defense patents, and sensitive blackmail material, Caleb said dryly. He sketched the floor plan from memory, detailing security systems and trapdoors. Marcus mapped a route, covert flights to avoid TSA, rented cars under burner IDs. "We'll need to hit the estate fast and quiet," Marcus said. "If Dominic learns we're headed there—" "He'll be waiting," Caleb finished. "But the files are our best shot." They spent the night preparing, resting in shifts. Before dawn, Caleb found Leah sitting alone outside, watching fog roll over the treetops. "You could have walked away," he said. "I still could," she replied, "but then I'd never sleep again." He smiled faintly. "You're braver than I ever was." "I'm just tired of watching good people die." 2 days later, they stood outside the Grayson family estate. It was a sweeping colonial-era mansion perched on a cliff above Lake Champlain, surrounded by tall iron gates and acres of private forest, the kind of place no one approached without invitation or an army. They came at midnight, cloaked in darkness. Marcus stayed behind as a lookout. Leah and Caleb approached from the eastern side, where the security cameras had blind spots Caleb remembered from childhood. "I spent summers here," he whispered. "I used to hide in that greenhouse to avoid dinner parties." Leah smiled despite the tension. "How poetic that we're breaking into your own house." The wine cellar was accessible through a side entrance hidden behind ivy. Caleb's fingerprints still worked, barely. A low beep sounded as the old biometric lock disengaged. They slipped inside. The air was cold and smelled of dust and age. In the cellar, a steel door protected the vault. Caleb keyed in a 16-digit code, then pressed his palm against the sensor. The door opened with a hiss. Inside were metal shelves stacked with labeled drives, hard copy ledgers and folders with names she recognized. Politicians, CEOs, military contractors. "This is it," Caleb said, voice low. "Everything Dominic tried to bury." But before Leah could respond, a light flicked on behind them. "Hello, brother." Dominic Hall stood at the entrance, and he wasn't alone. Dominic Hall looked exactly as Caleb remembered. Sharp black suit, calculated smirk, and a cruel confidence that came from knowing just how untouchable he was. Behind him stood 2 armed guards in paramilitary gear, faces covered by black tactical masks. "Did you really think you could just walk back into your past?" Dominic said, stepping into the vault with slow, deliberate ease. "Caleb, you should have stayed dead. It suited you." Caleb raised his hands. "You always did love theatrics, Dom." Dominic's eyes narrowed. "I had to clean up your mess. Your conscience cost the company billions. Do you know how many governments you offended? How many contracts we lost because of your self-righteous crusade?" Caleb moved slightly in front of Leah. "You mean the war profiteering deals I refused to sign, the AI kill programs? You're welcome." Dominic's smile faltered. "You were naive. This isn't about good or evil, it's about control. And now, thanks to you, I control Grayson Dynamics, Black Shield's defense pipeline, and every piece of data in this vault." Leah edged toward the wall where the emergency gas valve was hidden. Caleb's earlier tour had pointed it out. Dominic noticed. Don't get clever, nurse. You've played hero long enough." "Funny," Leah said coolly. "I didn't know monsters made speeches." Dominic raised his hand, and one of the guards lifted a silencer-equipped pistol. Then all hell broke loose. A thunderous blast echoed down the stone hallway. Marcus, from outside, had fired a distraction round through a side window. In that split second, Leah slammed her hand down on the gas valve. A white cloud burst from the vents. Numbing agent. Caleb shoved Dominic aside and tackled the closest guard. Leah grabbed the pistol and fired a warning shot near the second, forcing him to retreat. In the confusion, Dominic stumbled back into the corridor, coughing violently. "Get the drives," Caleb yelled. Leah packed the top three into a metal case as Marcus burst in through the cellar steps, shotgun ready. "Time to go," he shouted. As they escaped through the wine tunnel exit behind the racks, the last thing Caleb heard was Dominic's strangled promise. "This isn't over." They drove for hours through the back roads of Vermont, winding through dark woods and frozen lakes, until the lights of Montreal glimmered in the distance. There, in a hidden safe house provided by Marcus's network, they finally stopped. Leah tended to a gash on Caleb's shoulder. Marcus encrypted the drives for safekeeping. Silence hung over them until Caleb finally spoke. "There's something I haven't told you." Leah looked up. He held out a photograph he'd taken from the vault. A woman with striking green eyes laughing beside him in a black tie gala. Her name was embossed in gold at the bottom, Ariel Dane. She was the only one I trusted, my head of cybersecurity, my partner, and maybe more. Leah kept her expression neutral. "What happened to her?" "She disappeared a week before I did. Everyone assumed she ran, but I think she knew something. Maybe even tried to warn me." Marcus chimed in. The name popped up in a leaked chat log I reviewed. She was flagged by Black Shield as a rogue asset. "You think she's alive?" Caleb's eyes darkened. "If she is, she's either hiding or being held." Leah shifted in her seat. "If we find her, she could help decrypt the deeper layers of the vault data." Caleb nodded. "And maybe she can tell me what really happened the night I vanished." But Leah couldn't help the twinge of something sharp in her chest. Not jealousy, just a shadow of something more complex. She pushed it aside. The war wasn't over, and they still had battles to fight. The next day brought a brutal revelation. A drone strike took out one of Marcus's network safe houses in D.C. just hours after they transmitted a small sample of the vault data to an investigative bureau. 3 journalists were declared dead. The building was reduced to ash. Marcus's voice was tight with grief. "They're escalating. No more warnings. They're removing anyone close to the leak." Leah's hands trembled as she stared at the encrypted hard drives. "What's even on these?" Caleb answered quietly. "Proof of illegal weapons testing, government bribery, AI prediction programs used to influence elections, some of it dated back 2 decades. Marcus leaned forward. "We need to air this now, all of it. Drop it like a nuclear bomb across every news platform at once." Caleb hesitated. "If we dump it all at once, people won't believe it. It'll be written off as conspiracy, as a hack. We need validation, witnesses, context." Leah looked at him. "And if we wait too long, we all end up like the reporters in D.C. A soft ding interrupted them. Marcus's signal alert system blinked red. He swore under his breath. "They found us." In the street below, 3 black SUVs began circling. "Go bag," Caleb said. "Now." Leah, Marcus, and Caleb bolted for the underground garage. As they sped into the Montreal night, flames lit up the rearview mirror. The safe house exploded in a mushroom of fire. Blood was now in the water. and Black Shield was hunting like a shark. The cold crept in through the cracked windows of the cabin they'd taken shelter in, an abandoned ranger station tucked into the Laurentian Mountains, accessible only by snowmobile. Leah had stopped asking how Marcus found places like this. She was just grateful they hadn't exploded yet. Inside, they set up the hard drives on a generator-powered terminal. Caleb took the lead, booting into the vault data interface with the precision of a surgeon. "There's a layer of encryption Ariel designed," he explained. "It's hidden in the metadata structure. She called it the lantern." "Sounds poetic," Leah said. Caleb nodded. That was her, genius and romantic. She said if we ever needed to illuminate the truth, she'd light the way. With Marcus providing an extra firewall, Caleb decrypted the drive's deeper contents. What emerged was staggering. Tens of thousands of internal memos, financial logs, transaction histories, and encrypted audio from board meetings. Leah skimmed one document and froze. This shows Grayson Dynamics sold predictive surveillance software to an authoritarian regime. They used it to execute political dissidents. Marcus leaned over. "And look at this email thread. Black Shield knew. They built the software patch to mask the death counts in the reports." Caleb's jaw clenched. "We didn't just make weapons. We hid the bodies." He opened a video file labeled Ariel Final Testimony.mp4. The screen lit up with Ariel's face. She looked frightened but resolute. "If you're seeing this, Caleb, then I was right. They came for you. They came for me. The lantern was our last defense. The only truth that matters. You weren't paranoid. They really were watching. This company is the tip of something darker. The Atherton Circle is real, and they're rewriting the world beneath our feet." The video ended in static. Silence filled the room. Caleb shut the laptop slowly. She knew everything. She tried to stop them, and she paid for it. Leah reached out and squeezed his hand. She lit the path. "Now we walk it." But Marcus's eyes stayed on the door. "Let's hope we get to the end of it." As the wind howled against the ranger station, Leah sat by the fire, running her fingers over a faded patch on her jacket sleeve. It had been her father's, an army medic in Afghanistan. The only thing she had left of him after he disappeared when she was 16. "You okay?" Caleb asked softly. She nodded. "Just thinking." He sat beside her. "About your dad?" Leah didn't respond at first. Then, "He worked for a defense contractor when he came home. Always said it was temporary. One day he just vanished." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Do you know which contractor?" She reached into her bag and pulled out an old ID badge. "William Weston, clearance level 3. The badge bore the name Aegis Tech, a Black Shield subsidiary. Caleb's eyes widened. Aegis Tech was one of our shell companies. They handled R&D on the experimental field AI. "I looked for him for years," Leah whispered. "No records. Nobody. No answers." Caleb studied her, guilt surfacing in his expression. "You didn't just save me out of compassion. You were already chasing the shadows." She nodded. "You were my missing person, the one I finally got to bring home." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Caleb leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens, you saved more than me." They heard the sound before they saw the lights. An unmistakable mechanical hum followed by a deep thud. The drone had returned. Caleb rushed to the generator and shut it down while Marcus killed the heat source. Leah doused the fire with a pot of snowmelt. The station plunged into darkness. Outside, through a sliver in the shutters, they watched as a black chopper descended on the ridge. Tactical teams in white snow camouflage poured out, sweeping the perimeter with thermal scanners. "They tracked us through heat signature," Marcus said, "even through the ice." "We go out the tunnel," Caleb said. Leah turned. "What tunnel?" "The Ranger Supply Tunnel, used to connect to the observation station half a mile out. I saw the hatch in the basement." They gathered the encrypted drives, flashback units, and weapons. Marcus uploaded a final data dump to a secure Swiss relay before yanking the main cable. "They'll intercept the signal in seconds," he said, "but it'll buy time." In the basement, they pried open the hatch, revealing a narrow shaft lined with rusted rungs. Caleb went first, Leah next, then Marcus. Snow fell into the tunnel as the hatch closed. Behind them, the cabin exploded in a fireball, deliberate, calculated. "They're not just chasing us," Marcus said breathlessly. "They're deleting us, erasing every footprint." As they crawled through the frozen dark, Leah whispered, "Then we leave them one they'll never forget." The tunnel ended at the base of a derelict fire watchtower, nestled in the side of a rocky slope. Snow blanketed everything, but the clearing was empty for now. They emerged into the frigid air, breath-forming fog as they crouched low. Caleb led the way to an emergency cash box embedded beneath the tower's base. He yanked it open and removed a rugged satellite phone. It was old tech, untraceable and analog. He punched in a number from memory. 2 rings. Then, "Go." "Lynn," Caleb said. "It's me." A pause. "Caleb, holy hell, where are you?" "Alive, barely. I have the lantern." Another pause. Then Lynn's voice softened. "I always hoped you'd come back. I knew Dominic was lying." "Can you help?" "I'm still in. I've kept one node offline, deep inside the Icelandic relay grid. But if you're contacting me now, I assume we've passed DEFCON 2. "We're past DEFCON gone," Caleb replied. "All right, I'll prep the node. Bring the drives. You'll have to come through Reykjavik. Everything else is burned." Lin Chen was once Caleb's lead infrastructure architect, code genius, political dissident, and one of the few people Caleb ever trusted completely. "Do we trust him?" Leah asked after the call. "With my life," Caleb answered. "He helped me build the lantern. If there's a way to release it securely, Lynn will find it." That night, Marcus acquired forged documents for a private flight to Reykjavik using an old CIA alias. They moved quickly, knowing their digital trail was vanishing by the second. Before sunrise, they were airborne. Reykjavik was a city wrapped in ice and mystery. The snowdrifts were thick, but beneath them buzzed one of the most advanced tech networks in the world. Clean energy, encrypted bunkers, digital rebels who'd fled from governments and core. Lin Chen met them at an unmarked cafe near the old harbor, then led them through an alley and down a narrow stairwell behind a steel-latched door. "Welcome to the Lantern Room," he said. The bunker was a converted Cold War shelter, now pulsing with server stacks, solar backup batteries, and 3 enormous flat panels. Maps, documents, and real-time chatter from whistleblowers worldwide flickered across the screens. "We've been collecting secrets for years," Lynn said. Grayson Dynamics was just one piece of the puzzle. But now, with your data, he inserted one of the drives into a terminal and began scanning. Marcus wandered the walls, reading reports. Election manipulation in Africa, water access, privatization in Southeast Asia, child labor in biotech mining operations. "This is a vault of horrors," he muttered. "It's the world we built," Caleb said quietly. "Now we burn it." But Lynn hesitated. "We can't just drop all of this. If we do, bad actors will twist it. We need to curate a truth path." "What's that?" Leah asked. "A way to release the most explosive, undeniable pieces with verified context, timing, placement, platforms. It's all critical. Otherwise it becomes noise." Caleb nodded. "Let's build the path." They split into teams. Marcus coordinated with media allies in Germany and Brazil. Leah helped Lynn verify files against global incidents. Caleb rewrote his confession speech. By the time dusk fell, they had a launch plan. The network was ready. So was the world. The press conference was held in an abandoned theater in Berlin, one of the last neutral venues not under surveillance. The audience was a mix of independent journalists, human rights observers, and technologists. No governments, no corporations. Caleb walked onto the stage in a simple black suit. A spotlight lit his face. "My name is Caleb Grayson," he began. "You were told I died. That was a lie." Gasps echoed through the room. "I am alive, and I am responsible, not for my disappearance, but for the empire I helped create, for the technology that enabled mass manipulation, surveillance, and violence." He paused. "Today, I reveal the truth." The screens behind him lit up with data, spreadsheets of secret deals, maps of drone strikes, leaked memos with top-level signatures. Caleb narrated each one, threading them into a web of accountability. And then, mid-sentence, he staggered. Leah rose from her seat instantly. Caleb's hand trembled, his voice faltered, then he collapsed. Chaos erupted. Lynn and Leah rushed the stage. Caleb's lips were blue. He was seizing. "He's been poisoned," Leah shouted. "Get me a medkit now." Lynn checked Caleb's pocket. A syringe, empty, marked with a tiny symbol, a black circle with a serpent, Black Shield's insignia. Someone had gotten close enough to inject him, someone on the inside. Leah administered atropine, praying it would slow the effects. Caleb blinked, barely conscious. "Don't let it die." Then he passed out. Outside, the reporter scrambled, but the screens remained active. The truth was still playing, and the world was watching. Caleb Grayson lay in a coma. His body was stable, barely. The poison had been expertly engineered to slow metabolism, mimic brain death, and erase long-term memory pathways. If Leah hadn't acted fast, he would have become a shell. They moved him to a private wing inside a resistance-run clinic under the streets of Prague. Leah never left his side. Lynn and Marcus coordinated global fallout. Caleb's press conference had gone viral, broadcast in full before being censored across major networks, but it was too late to suppress. The Lantern files had already been mirrored across thousands of decentralized servers. Governments issued statements, protests erupted, Black Shield stock plummeted, but the man behind it all was unconscious. "He can't come back yet," Leah said to Lynn one night, watching monitors tick quietly beside Caleb's bed. "He's not safe, not until we finish it." Lynn nodded. Then we fake his death. It was the only way. They crafted a plan, one that mirrored the methods used to erase him the first time. They would use the poison's neurological mimicry to declare him clinically dead. His medical records would be sealed. A public funeral would be staged. Only the inner circle would know the truth. Marcus coordinated media partners in Sweden and Iceland. Leah falsified the death certificate. Lynn created the digital artifacts. 4 days later, the news broke. Caleb Grayson succumbs to mysterious collapse. Founder of Grayson Dynamics confirmed dead. The world mourned. But beneath the Prague clinic, Caleb opened his eyes. "Did it work?" he asked, voice hoarse. Leah took his hand. "It worked. Now let's finish what you started." The Lantern files dropped at 9 a.m. GMT, synchronized across 2,000 media outlets, independent newsrooms, and blockchain-verified information portals. The launch was calculated for maximum reach and minimum interference. The files revealed illegal weapons testing in civilian zones, election manipulation via AI sentiment analysis, hidden corporate influence over military decisions, surveillance tech used against populations in so-called friendly nations, and names of people who approved the projects, politicians, executives, even a few journalists who had taken hush payments. Leah and Lynn released a video statement. "This isn't just a leak, this is a reckoning. Caleb Grayson gave his life to ensure this truth reached the world. You deserve to know who's been steering your fate behind closed doors." Millions watched. Protests erupted in Berlin, Toronto, Johannesburg, Buenos Aires. People demanded resignations, arrests, trials. Some leaders issued denials. Others stepped down. Within a week, 10 governments launched inquiries. 6 companies filed for bankruptcy. Black Shield remained silent, but behind the curtain, their empire was crumbling. In a forested safe house in Finland, Caleb, hidden beneath a new identity, watched the world he once helped build begin to burn. He turned to Leah. "Now we make sure it never rises again." The trial of Dominic Hall began 3 weeks later in The Hague, under a special tribunal for corporate crimes against humanity. He was charged with conspiracy to commit mass human rights violations, attempted murder of a whistleblower, cyber terrorism, illegal arms trafficking through shell companies. Marcus, testifying as a witness, presented the decrypted files showing Dominic's authorization of Project Marionette, an AI system designed to control population behavior in unstable regions by manipulating access to internet, water, and healthcare. Ariel Dane's final video was played for the court. The courtroom went silent. Leah testified too, outlining how Dominic's operatives tracked, attacked, and attempted to silence them every step of the way. She detailed the attempt on Caleb's life, the drone strikes, the assassinations of journalists. The prosecution's final blow came from Lynn, a real-time simulation of Project Marionette using public data, showing how populations could be steered without ever realizing it. Dominic's defense tried to argue patriotism, national interest, economic necessity, but the judges weren't swayed. Dominic Hall was convicted on all counts, sentenced to life without parole. As the gavel struck, Leah sat in the gallery, tears threatening. It wasn't just justice for Caleb, it was justice for her father, for Ariel, for every voice silenced by greed. Afterward, she stepped into the sunlight. A camera crew approached, asking for comment. She looked directly at the lens. "This isn't the end," she said. "This is where the healing begins." For weeks, Leah Weston was a global headline, the nurse who defied a billion-dollar empire. From first aid to final justice, the woman behind the Grayson resurrection. She saved Caleb Grayson, then helped save the world. But Leah hated every interview. She hadn't done this for fame, and the media spotlight felt artificial, like standing under harsh fluorescent lights that exposed only her outline, never her truth. Still, she endured the attention. She answered the questions. She sat through television spots, panels, even podcast interviews. She did it because people needed to hear the message, not the myth. And because Caleb couldn't speak, not yet. She spoke of truth, of courage, of accountability, and of sacrifice. "I didn't save a billionaire," she said in one now famous speech. "I saved a man who refused to sell his soul. I saved a world that still believes some things are worth dying for." Behind the scenes, she and Lynn continued pushing the Lantern Files into international legal systems. Every day brought a new subpoena, a new arrest, a new whistleblower, emboldened by the truth. One night, after taping an interview in Oslo, Leah stood on a balcony with Marcus, looking out at the snow-dusted city. "Do you ever wish we'd stayed silent?" he asked, sipping his coffee. She didn't answer right away. "No," she said, "but I wish the world hadn't needed us to scream." In the mountains of northern Finland, surrounded by pine and silence, a new facility was under construction. A school, a laboratory, and a sanctuary all in one, designed to train ethical technologists, rehabilitate corrupted systems, and protect truth seekers across the world. It would be called the Grayson Foundation. Caleb stood at the edge of the foundation site, breathing the sharp morning air. His beard was longer now, his skin roughened by weeks of exposure, but his posture was stronger than ever. He had shed the billionaire's sheen. What remained was something more human. Leah approached, a rolled blueprint in hand. "Phase 1 is almost done," she said. "Refuge units, offline research labs, the ethics training wing." Caleb smiled. "And we're not using a single chip from Black Shield or its subsidiaries." "Not anymore," she replied. He studied the tree line for a long moment. "I used to think power was about control," he said. "Now I think it's about stewardship, what you protect, who you serve." Leah nodded. "That's what my father used to say, just before he disappeared." Caleb turned to her. "We'll find the truth about him. You gave me my life back. I'll help you reclaim yours." They stood in silence, watching the frost glint in the sun. Behind them, workers raised a beam into place, engraved with 3 words: truth, shelter, future. Months passed. The world slowly recalibrated in the wake of the Lantern Files. Legal reforms were introduced. Security clearances were reviewed. Transparency initiatives sprang up across the private sector. Black Shield was dismantled, its remaining assets scattered to regulatory fires. Leah declined a Nobel nomination. She turned down book deals. She refused to run for office. Instead, she returned to Oregon, to the woods. She hiked the same trail that had once led her to a dying man under the leaves. This time the air was gentler, the quiet more peaceful. She no longer feared the silence. She embraced it. At the clearing where it had all begun, she set down her pack and sat against a mossy log. She lit a small fire, brewed tea in a tin cup, and listened to the wind. A rustle in the trees brought her to attention, but she didn't reach for a weapon. A moment later, Caleb stepped into view, dressed in hiking gear, a subtle smile on his lips. "You came," he said. "You brought the tea," she replied. They sat together by the fire as dusk settled around them, not as fugitives or revolutionaries, but as two people who had walked through hell and chosen to keep walking. He handed her a small box. Inside was a metal pendant, an eagle with spread wings, transformed from a symbol of secrecy to one of freedom. "I had it reforged," he said, "a reminder that even the darkest things can be reshaped." She slipped it over her neck, the metal warm against her skin. "Thank you," she said, "for coming back." "I never left," he whispered. The woods sighed around them, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt possible. The peace didn't last. 3 weeks after Leah's return to Oregon, a coded message was intercepted by Lynn's network. It was embedded in a batch of old Black Shield recovery protocols. The message was short but clear. "Omega Protocol, 1 asset remaining. Clean the nurse." Someone had survived the collapse of Black Shield. Someone with enough pull to activate one last operation. The file's metadata suggested the hit had been planned months earlier, but placed on hold, likely waiting to see if Caleb really died. Now that Leah was back in public, even briefly, the threat was live. Lynn called from Finland. "You need to move." Leah stood in her clinic, now reopened as a trauma center for off-grid communities. "I'm not running anymore." "You won't have to," Caleb's voice said from behind her. She turned. He had arrived by private caravan, escorted by security from the Grayson Foundation, unmarked, anonymous, and trained in quiet defense. Caleb handed her a small tracker. "We have a lead." The Omega trigger was activated from Argentina. Remote contract, but they've already sent someone. Leah nodded. "Then we end this. Here." They prepared quietly. Local law enforcement was quietly briefed. Surveillance drones watched the roads. Traps were laid. They didn't have to wait long. That night, the assassin came. He came dressed as a forest ranger. Tall, lean, a neutral expression, but the gloves he wore were tactical grade, and he carried no radio. Leah spotted him the moment he stepped onto the property. She was waiting on the porch, armed not with a gun, but with a cup of coffee and a steel resolve. "Can I help you?" she asked casually. He smiled. "Trail conditions report. Got a warning about poachers." "Funny," she said, standing. "I didn't see anything on the ranger board, and I just updated it yesterday." He moved fast, drawing a suppressed pistol from beneath his coat. But Leah moved faster. She dropped to the ground as a flashbang went off from under the porch, triggered by his footstep. The assassin staggered. Caleb emerged from the tree line with a shock baton. In 2 strikes, the man was down. Leah stood over him, breath heaving. "Omega's dead. You just didn't get the memo." They turned him over to authorities. No name, no tags, just a Black Shield tattoo on the back of his neck. It was over, truly over. They returned to the cabin and watched the sunrise together. No more secrets, no more running, only light. A month later, Caleb stood before a judge in a closed hearing in The Hague. "I hereby declare the legal identity of Caleb Michael Grayson, born November 18th, 1984, to be nullified. The judge's gavel struck. He was officially gone. In the paperwork, he had taken on a new name, Michael Rayner, combining his middle name and his mother's maiden name. He declined reinstatement as CEO of Grayson Dynamics, now under humanitarian trusteeship. The company's assets were being repurposed, technology redistributed to health and education sectors. At a private memorial staged for optics, a casket was buried, empty. Caleb watched from the tree line with Leah at his side. "I thought I'd feel grief," he said, "but all I feel is space." "Sometimes you have to bury what you were," Leah said, "to grow into who you're meant to be." They didn't stay for the speeches. They had new lives to live, new people to become. Leah opened the doors to her new trauma care center, built with funding from the Grayson Foundation, in a reclaimed timber building nestled between the woods and a mountain lake. It was called Lantern Ridge. People came from all walks, off-grid communities, whistleblowers, tech refugees, and wilderness dwellers. Leah trained new medics. She taught digital literacy and cyber safety. She led trauma counseling and wilderness preparedness courses. She gave survivors a home. Caleb, now Michael, taught ethics in tech remotely under a pseudonym. He worked quietly from a small cabin just out of town, growing a vegetable garden and learning to live without the weight of power. They saw each other often, but always on their own terms. No cameras, no media, just the soft hum of normalcy returning. At Lantern Ridge, a new motto was etched on the stone entry. "Truth isn't loud, it's steady." Leah read it every morning, and every morning she smiled. Late one evening, after the clinic had closed and the sun dipped behind the lake, Leah sat by the fire with Michael. They sipped cider, watching fireflies dance across the trees. He handed her a small drive. "I found one more file," he said. Leah blinked. "You said we decrypted everything." "I thought we did, but this one was buried in a private Ariel protocol labeled Do Not Open." Leah turned it over in her hand. "What is it?" Michael shrugged. "Could be nothing. Or it could be what comes next." She stared at the fire. "We've fought enough wars," she said. "Maybe we don't need to open every door." He nodded. "Or maybe we save it for someone who will need it more than we ever did." They sealed the drive in a vault beneath Lantern Ridge. A mystery locked away. For now, because some secrets weren't meant to be erased. They were meant to wait until the world was ready.